Happy Tuesday and welcome back to another episode of Let's Talk Broncos. I'm Damarri Mathis, joined by JR. I was going to call you JR Drafts. I was reading across the top. Joey Richards and Zach Seegers. Guys, how are you?
I'm doing really good. I was giving such a big mile high salute to everybody that I damn near just knocked over my mic. But my Tuesday is, it's going really well. I had a good day of work. I'm chilling. I'm ready to talk Broncos yet again with everybody here. Yeah, I don't know. I'm excited about this one because it's a new concept, I think. It's like something we haven't talked about before. And, you find yourself on a podcast that goes 6 times a week. That sometimes you find yourself repeating the same points. I don't think this is one of those episodes, so I'm excited about it.
It's a good point. It is a good point. It's going to be a fresh one. I'm glad we've got people coming in. Start asking mailbag questions over on our Twitter or Facebook or wherever. Join the Discord, ask them in there because we'll be doing a mailbag again tomorrow. I like these middle of the week ones because we can talk about some fresher ideas. And yeah, big fan of my co-host JR Drafts and Damarri Mathis 303.
I'm not with you. I'm just kidding. No. Zach is amazing. Shout out to him.
I think it's finally time to tell the listeners that I can't actually stand either of you. And doing this for
it's a bit. It's all a bit.
Like, I don't think I can continue to do it. It hurts deeply. And as we come onto the show, I couldn't keep my face together. We were having a conversation, and sorry for being late. So thanks for joining us. If you would like to join the discussion, hop along into the chat over on YouTube or Facebook. You just search for Mile High Sports and you'll find us at the top of the page because we are live now. And as Joey already said, it's a little bit of a different episode today. We did game recap yesterday. We'll be having a fun mailbag episode tomorrow. But today's is which Denver Broncos have the most at stake for the final 3 weeks. Wayne King has followed the instructions. He has joined the chat over on Facebook. Wayne says, "What's going on? Good evening." Good evening to you, sir. Thank you for joining us and watching the show. So if you have any comments about what we're talking about, make sure that you are dropping them there in the chat. And I think we should get started here as soon as the white balance on my camera decides to return to normal. Fantastic. I want to start, Zach, with who you think has the most at stake for the next 3 weeks. You went defense for your first one.
I did.
Perfectly sized. Ooh, who would have thought defense talked about on the Let's Talk Broncos podcast?
I'm going Damarri Mathis, and I think it's at stake in a good way. I think most of us went positive with our at stakes. He's got a ton to gain. I think if he keeps playing lights out these final 3 weeks of the season, what's up, Samuel? If he plays lights out these final 3 weeks of the season, it's going to be hard to justify paying Ronald Darby $10 million or not freeing up $10 million by moving on from Ronald Darby. Like, you could trade him and free up $10 million. And he's a cornerback coming off an ACL, which is really concerning. And he's going to be, I'm trying to get his exact birthday. He's 28 right now. He's going to be 29 on January 2nd. So almost 30-year-old cornerback coming off an ACL injury, and you've got a really cheap, super promising, high upside option behind him. I get like the argument for insurance, but you see a roster that needs help everywhere. The idea of trading Ronald Darby for a pick, like let's say a 5th rounder, and you get $10 million freed up, now you can address a couple needs on offense. Like that makes good football sense to me. And I trust George Payton to replenish the cornerback depth because he knows how to draft cornerbacks, it appears. Maybe not other things, but cornerbacks for sure. However, if Damarri Mathis suddenly has a cold stretch and starts getting burnt, which I don't expect, but like, let's say, the Rams are targeting him this week, and then the Chiefs target him, and then the Chargers go at him, and the bloom comes off him a bit, then you've got to bring Ronald Darby back, and Damarri Mathis will be sent back into a backup role. So I think there's a lot at stake for him down the stretch.
It's like,
wow, Joey just hates. Wow.
Wow.
damn.
I'm
Tell me
confused.
why. Tell me why, Joey. I'm sorry, Bree.
Yeah, no.
I feel like I need to defend myself.
Go ahead, defend yourself. He's coming in hot.
I am. I just don't see, Zach, the big decline that could happen. He's already proven himself as where he should have been drafted, if not more. I have a hard time, unless like some craziness starts happening out there where it's like he has gone down in stock drastically. I haven't seen the sample size to say Damarri Mathis is a lockdown corner yet, or not lockdown, but I mean, my God, Mile High Sports making a great point.
This show, I'm going to be fiery. This show,
I just can't. I just don't see the big decline. Like, I don't see what's really at stake. You drafted a cornerback where he was. Can he go back to what round was he drafted again? It was like fourth round, fifth round, fourth round. It was fourth round. Damarri Mathis. I just don't see him not looking like a fourth round pick. Even if he looked terrible this whole time, he would look like a fourth round pick.
That is interesting, considering we had that conversation a lot on Let's Talk Broncos, because we were talking about Damarri Mathis making a lot of boneheaded mistakes coming in and him not looking like a fourth round pick, or maybe not where you would hope he would be. He's improved tremendously. Now he's overproducing where I think he was drafted. He's already balanced himself out. I don't know if Damarri Mathis has to prove more, but I think that 3 games is important for him.
Well, it's not relative to his draft style. I guess for me, that conversation's dead and buried. I'm with you guys. We're all in agreement there. I don't think that's at stake at all. He has greatly outperformed his fourth round draft pedigree. I think what's at stake for him is a starting spot on the Denver Broncos in 2023, and that's not guaranteed right now. My actual I hate you, Joey. For the audio listeners, Joey keeps commenting or throwing up his comment that says terrible point by Zach here. And then Bree comments from Mile High Sports that Joey makes a good point. I'm at an 11 right now. The starting spot for him, based on my understanding and the research I've done, is not promised. I would, if it were me making the decisions, it already would be put in place. I don't think it is in place right now. And I think with stellar performances, he can win. He can remove doubt, and he can win and secure that starting spot down the stretch, especially going against Justin Herbert, going against Patrick Mahomes here. And I think that it can be at stake in a positive way too. I don't think he's going to lose much. He might go back to being the first cornerback off the bench, but I think he can win a starting spot these final 3 weeks.
So in a dream world, my thing is still that I would like to have somebody competing with Damarri Mathis for that cornerback spot. And it really doesn't matter what he does at this point. For me, that's why I say this. This is my only point, is that in a dream world. Now, I'm not saying that the Broncos will replace him, because they have so much they have to do on one side of the ball. But let's say in a dream world, he would be a guy that I would prefer if you had a vet in there competing with. That's just no matter what, pretty much. Just because of where he was drafted, and I think that it's kind of been flashes of brilliance, amazing. You saw that one play this last week where he undercut that out-cutting route to the sideline, and he almost got a pick on it. It was like, damn, like Damarri Mathis looks really good there. But he also has moments where I feel like he is so hot in pursuit and tackling that a lot of the times he ends up missing the tackle, which I don't mind that he's so in hot pursuit. It's just like, tone it down a little bit. Let's make sure you get the safe tackle instead of, trying to stop him exactly where he is when it doesn't have to be that way all the time. I don't see a scenario in which Damarri Mathis isn't on my list where I would not be happy or being like, okay, I get it if you signed a vet corner to compete with him for the starting job. That's my only.
How much are you looking at there? How much, like, what's the ballpark on when you like say vet corner? What do you imagine?
Don't do that, because the veteran minimum got passed over for somebody like Callahan, who they didn't try to retain either. So I don't think you're looking in that direction. We got Darby on IR, Phillips now on IR, but your next up is Bassie. And then obviously Michael Ojemudia is probably not back either, considering they don't even attempt to look in his direction anymore. So the Broncos are not necessarily holding pace with what you would consider veteran presence. Are you going out there and reaching for more talent out past Damarri Mathis right now? I don't think so.
So what I'm looking at, Zach, in particular, I'm not going to give you a name because I haven't really looked at the cornerback free agent market.
Like a price range is what I'm looking for.
I'm looking at more like a Kareem Jackson type deal where we're looking at an older vet option that has played good in the past, and then he will compete with Damarri Mathis on a low deal. I know he's not the future.
So you can pick on him?
But I do know that he's a guy that has played good in the past, and we'll see if he has another one in there. At the minimum, I know that he's good depth. That's what I'm looking for to compete with Damarri Mathis. And there's not a situation where I wouldn't like that. I think that I want someone competing with him no matter the situation.
That's fair. For me, it's like, how much are you willing to invest in that? Is at a point that maybe you just keep Ronald Darby? Personally, yeah, I think, I stand by it. He's a chance to win.
I feel Zach as well, though. I do. I was making a point earlier. I said terrible play, but I'm just being funny. That's the whole point of that. I do agree with Zach to a point, and I do want to say this, that Damarri Mathis has been tremendous, and what's happened is he's worked his way from a 4th-round rookie to being in the position where he will be competed with for a starter next year. That's like not something that you should gloss over. And Zach, I do have to give you this as well. If he just played terrible this entire time, you would have cornerback moved up your list. He's going to have to stay consistent and play well. So I do think you make a solid point.
And again, I agree. They probably will have someone else in that room that they trust, and they'll look, maybe it's another solid pick, but I think Mathis will have the inside track on that side.
The whole reason I made that point is because I know that I'll be I'm not going to say I'll be proven right, but it'll at least make me look right when George Payton uses another draft pick on a cornerback because that's just what he does every single season.
That's the old guarantee Coach Hackett's firing trick.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Oh my goodness. We got to move on to everyone's favorite position, right tackle. Joey, tell me why you think Cam Fleming has the most at stake these last 3 weeks.
All right. I'm going to do the Eminem 8 Mile thing. Everyone prepare for Zach Seegers to make some big argument as why, no matter what the situation is. But first, Cam Fleming has been, I wouldn't say up and down this year. I would say he has been a average to below average tackle for the Broncos this entire year. Now with Bull's contract coming up, or not Bull's contract coming up, but an out in his contract coming up off of a big injury, I doubt the Broncos want to enter this free agency with 2 big holes at tackle. Obviously a very premium position. And one the Broncos are going to look to address, but you're going to want to look at one side compared to 2. You're not going to want to look at both sides. You're not going to want to do that. Broncos have too many holes on offense. It is huge for Cam Fleming, and I'm going to talk through these boos because I'm correct. It is huge for Cam Fleming to play good, to earn a spot on this roster. You want him to be average. You want him to be above average through the rest of these games, because you don't want the Broncos looking for 2 tackles this offseason. You do not, under any circumstance. And Cam Fleming has been the guy that the Broncos staff has been continuously giving opportunities to. Like, this is the guy they want to be good. This is the guy they want to work out. Cam Fleming. So I think that he has a lot to gain and a lot to lose this next season as far as a contract, even if it is a 1 year next year. I just highly doubt the Broncos want to look for 2 tackles next year. So Cam Fleming, hey, go work yourself into one. That's what I'll say.
Yeah, I actually agree. I think he's got a good deal at stake.
Zach,
can you read this comment for me, please?
Yeah. Boo! I was booing Joey during his thing. The one point I will throw out is I think how this tackle room is constructed has very little to do with Cam Fleming. So just Joey's point's garbage. Whether or not Cam Fleming looks great down the stretch or looks terrible down the stretch doesn't mean he'll be an appealing tackle to whatever offensive coordinator and head coach the Broncos bring in next. Now, I think one thing that favors Cam Fleming is the Broncos might be desperate after, how they've managed their offensive line room this year. They might not be in a position to pick and choose who they want back. They might be on their knees begging and pleading. But
you think I'm right. At the end of the day, Zach Seegers thinks I'm correct.
I do. The biggest point that I do keep coming back to is honestly the system fit thing. I think that is a much bigger factor in Cam Fleming's future than his on-field play. Also, I couldn't find a good Cam Fleming photo, so I had to use one of Russ that we may or may not see later on for this show. And he was just out of frame, so that's why Cam Fleming is missing his right hand.
Okay, Bree, do you agree or disagree with my point that Cam Fleming has a lot at stake at the moment?
I think we saw that firsthand when we were watching a random selective play, and there was a inconsistency with his ability to hold the line. But that's been pretty much the case for the offensive line for the Denver Broncos, including the right tackle position, which I know that we here at Let's Talk Broncos all kind of fall in the same position there of why it is the way that it is. I think a lot of that has to go with coaching, and I think a lot of contributions to that line via Butch Berry is what we're seeing play out right now. So I've got some frustrations. I think that Cam Fleming, in order to stay a prominent piece of that line, needs to play some really big snaps. I'm worried about the constant rotation because right now you're just looking for a guard or two that can stand up straight. So I'm really worried about what that spells for everyone else trying to, hit their assignments and make sure that the guy next to them is hitting his. So there's a lot that goes into it that I think we unfairly attribute to one player over another when they're loud mistakes. Fleming's holding, I think, kind of falls in play with that. So yeah, I'd like to see him really hit it out of the park. Do I think that's going to happen? That remains to be seen, but I think it would contribute to him having a job next season here with the team.
Totally. And I think the biggest point here, Bree, in my opinion, why he has so much at stake is because the Broncos have a lot to lose next year at the tackle position. That's why. There's not a situation or there's not an offseason you ever want to look at going into with 2 holes at left and right tackle. Obviously, I made the point earlier with Bulls having an out in his contract coming off a season-long injury, where at the beginning of the season he wasn't playing his best football either. Cam Fleming, I think, is the most reliable option at tackle for the Broncos right now. Through the season, he has been the most consistent piece. So that's why I say he has a lot to lose, a lot to gain. Even if the Broncos do bring in a next coaching staff. The Broncos had the most film on this guy. Why couldn't he, even if you did draft a guy ahead of him, he could be a viable backup option. The Broncos are already swinging him left to right. I just think that if he played terrible down the stretch, it could be a detriment to him. If he played good down the stretch, it could be a positive. Even if he played average down the stretch, it could be a positive. But does he have a lot to lose? Most definitely. You are on a team that needs a tackle. So I think he has a lot to lose here.
I like Wayne King's point here about contract money. Money is going to be the biggest issue with Russ's contract. I think that's heavily on a lot of people's minds. Zach, I didn't want to steal away from your momentum, though. Go ahead.
No, I just, whatever Joey needs to tell himself to cope is fine.
I love it. I went in a completely shocking direction from where I think you all thought I was going to go. But I want to talk about someone who has a lot on stake and has so all year. In order to get Jerry Jeudy at the top of my list, he's had to make a lot of waves here. So now with Jerry Jeudy in whatever week we're in right now, because I forget, but so we have 3 games. We're in week 14, 16. Entering week 15, 16, who knows? 16 already? There's 3 games left though.
Yeah, because there's 18 weeks now.
Oh, there is 18 weeks now. I was like, couldn't do the math right off the top of my head. Now I've lost my train of thought. So Jerry Jeudy obviously has done a tremendous job remaining consistent for the last couple of weeks. I'd say even since week 4, he has shown a tremendous amount of growth with or without Russell Wilson. I think it needs to be noted that it does not matter exactly who his quarterback is, although I know, Zach, that it technically does, depending when you're looking at his efficiency and his productivity. But what it's important to note is that Jerry Jeudy's ability to play the position that he's been put in and then also switch roles, as we've seen in the last couple of weeks, putting Jerry Jeudy in a position to win, specifically at the things that he is good at, has really elevated his notoriety around Broncos country, me specifically. But the last 3 weeks are going to be extremely important for how I feel about Jerry Jeudy going into the next season. If the Broncos decide to go ahead and pick that, 5th year option up. So it's a little scary to me, but I'm not like I believe it can happen. I think if he does exactly what he's been doing, and even if he doesn't score, 3 touchdowns a game, because that's crazy. I'm not trying to see that. What I'm trying to see is the same kind of Jeudy that's going out there right now, continuing to do so for the next 3 games. That's why I think it's very imperative, because if you see a drop back, that's going to make me uneasy.
Yeah. I want to highlight as well that there was smoke, and a lot of smoke around Jerry Jeudy's off-season, or not off-season, but trade deadline rumors, right? Like to the point where we had reporters give a price of what it would have taken to get him off the team. They had a price tag on Jerry Jeudy. That's why this is a lot to lose right here. That's why, because they were willing to get rid of this guy. Now, if he continues on the trend that he's in now, he could work into a spot where it's like, we don't want to trade him at all. But I do also think that if he were to even regress a little bit and he wasn't as consistent of a player, there's a really good chance. Like I was predicting maybe a week ago, even after that 3 touchdown game, I would be talking about, hey, I still think Jerry Jeudy's traded this offseason. I really do. Now at this moment, I'm not so sure. It's up in the air, but I still could see a situation where Jerry Jeudy could be traded this offseason. It's kind of crazy, but definitely if he continued on this trend for the rest of the season, it would make it really, really tough on this Broncos team and George Paton to know if they wanted to. So I think that he is exactly the person that I would highlight for who's at most at stake, just because of the Broncos have already played with the idea of getting rid of him. That's the main reason. That's why he is the prototype picture of who has the most to gain and who doesn't right now. He has definitely a lot at stake.
Do you think it was a lot to light a fire under him at all in any way whatsoever? Do you think that was just the associated outcome from it? It just sort of made it real?
I don't think it was to light a fire on him. I think that they, the fact that they put a price tag out there on him where NFL reporters are getting hey, it would have taken a 2nd round pick, tells me that they were really playing with the idea that if someone were to have offered that, they would have taken it. So his name's already been
2nd round pick right now.
No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't, just because he's on a rookie deal, right, guys? That's a big thing there. You have him locked up for next year. Next year is a different conversation. This might be a trade deadline talk next year.
You wouldn't extend him right now. You wouldn't make the moves for that.
He hasn't shown enough. I love Jerry Jeudy, but he hasn't shown enough for me to be I know what he's worth. If anything, I have no idea what he's worth right now. He's shown me flashes of awesome and then a lot of unproductive where I could blame it on the quarterback, but I don't want to make excuses. It's an unknown. That's the issue, is that he shows flashes of brilliance, we need to see the brilliance that, like in that 3 touchdown game that I tweeted out, I thought that was the most complete Jerry Jeudy game we had seen. Even last game, the Broncos feeding him the ball, not just getting him the ball, but finding ways to get the ball in Jerry Jeudy's hand was like, oh, they think well of this guy. But 2 games isn't enough. It's not enough for any player, especially when you're starting from we were offering you at trade deadline. The ladder to get up is longer than if you started at, hey, this is my first round pick. You know what I mean? He has more to prove, I think, to this this team than people want to admit. And it sucks because I'm a big Jerry Jeudy fan. I just think if I'm looking through their glasses and everything that I've heard, he has a little bit of a road to climb. So he needs to continue on this for the Broncos to feel good about him going into the future and wanting to offer him that extension.
Can I go? Okay. I think there's, I don't know. I do kind of disagree. I don't think he has a ton to prove. And I don't think what he has to prove is like, does he deserve a roster spot or whatever? I think it's like super fucking obvious he deserves a roster spot. Like
if you can't trade
offense, him. Yeah, this offense is devoid of talent. And he's the most talented guy that isn't coming off of like ridiculously damaging knee surgery or a knee injury. I think in that sense, he's set. In terms of making 17 million a year, making 20 plus mil, like if Jeudy tears it up next season, then you're looking at like $25 million a year because that's the rate for a good young receiver at this point. I don't know if he'll get there, but like that's a lot at stake for Jerry Jeudy. I think the other thing that's at stake is right now they're experimenting with what does this look like with Jeudy at the X when Sutton's back. Is this still our best answer on offense? And if it is, and you start building kind of what Joey was just saying, if he's not just the focal point for a week or two, but the focal point for this offense moving forward, that's huge at stake for him. Like not just from whatever narrative aspect or from like our fan perspective, but from the aspect that like if you're the featured weapon in this offense, you're going to have a really productive contract season and you're going to make money just because you're a featured wide receiver in an offense. It's not about being in this offense, obviously. But he's been tearing it up. Few things I wanted to highlight. He's on the season now, obviously number 1 still yards per run against man. He's climbed all the way up to like 56th percentile against zone. So he's an above average weapon there now. He continues to blossom and grow into a star receiver. Like I feel confident saying that now, but I do agree. He's got a lot at stake in either direction. Is he going to kind of have those consistency issues flare up and fade back into the background of this offense? Or is he going to cement himself as a star that's going to be making north of 20 million in the very near future?
Yeah, I get it.
Frankie says it's hilarious how difficult it was for this team to properly use Jeudy. I wanted to point that out because we have seen a really large leap there as they have changed his position. I think it's been important for Jerry Jeudy, and it's instilled some confidence in him. It's also going to teach him pretty fast how he's going to have to react to different things that happen because it's not always going to work out, but he's been tremendous. I don't have any complaints. It's not the same narrative over and over again, which I'm glad. I'm glad to be off that soapbox. So appreciate with that. There are a couple of comments here. I do want to touch on this one really quick from Samuel Castro. It was about our offensive line discussion a little bit earlier. Do you guys think if they change the O-line coach, would that be something to think about? I think they're absolutely thinking about that, guys.
1,000%, guys. I think Butch Barry, from everything I've heard, Butch Barry is kind of like the worst.
He's 100% gone. There's a zero. if there's a 0.1% chance that Nathaniel Hackett returns as a head coach, there is a like literal 0% chance. There is a better chance that I don't know. Dolphins create time travel in the next 24 hours than Butch Barry's back as the Broncos offensive line coach next year. It like guarantee.
Okay.
Yeah.
I really like it.
Yeah. Ahead. I mean, literally every single thing I've heard about the Butch Berry experiment. And it doesn't matter who I hear it from. Like, I'll say it this way. I have not had somebody come up to me and be like, Butch Berry is awesome right now. Like, I haven't had anybody say that, yet multiple people have been like, Butch Berry's a train wreck. That's the kind of way I would frame it. I'm not getting too much into detail.
I was hearing it preseason about like I think in OTAs I was hearing it. I was hearing it really early. I remember being surprised how early I was hearing it. Just like, oh yeah, such and such player and Barry aren't getting along. Oh, such and such this person and Barry aren't getting along. It just yeah, and he's not good at his job. It's one thing if like okay, I know maybe when Munchak was first hired, maybe he rubbed some people the wrong way. Okay, that's Mike Munchak. This is Butch Berry, and that's not you're gonna move on from him immediately.
Mm-hmm.
Another coaching observation that's been made, Coop over on YouTube says Shermer's personal decisions, and we're going back, we're just reflecting at this point, with both Court and Judy always made me laugh. Cry laugh? Are we talking about like not happy tears whatsoever? Because it wasn't good.
A lot of Shermer's personnel decisions were very suspect. Not even just Judy and Court. Like, they were both like, he had a ton of personnel issues. Which leads me to my main point that I want to make here, that, one of the biggest reasons Fangio got fired was because of situations like this. Like, he stood next to Shermer and wanted to make it an issue, and it was an issue. I think Nathaniel Hackett should be held liable for hiring the likes of Butch Berry and firing the likes of Mike Munchak. I just want people to keep that same energy with personnel decisions.
And Peyton. Like, Hackett is the number one to blame when it comes to hiring the staff. And I don't want my GM telling a coach who to hire. I don't want him being like, this is who your offensive coordinator is going to be. This is who, like, that's a problem. These guys have to be able to work well together. But I do think Peyton should have been going, you need more veteran presence on this staff. You need more experience on this staff. You need more experience in the offensive room, because who are you going to turn to if you realize you do need help? Because this Justin Outen guy's a joke. Like, what? That is a problem that I think reflects poorly on Peyton here. Mainly it's on Hackett. I think you should empower your head coach to hire the staff they want, but you also, like, within bounds. Like, same thing with Bill Belichick. Bill Belichick gets away with it because he's Bill Belichick. But, like, if Bill Belichick wasn't Bill Belichick and he's like, yeah, my son's going to be the defensive coordinator, and my old defensive coordinator, who's my buddy, is going to be the offensive coordinator, and my old special teams coach is going to be the offensive line coach. Like, if you're not Bill Belichick, I would hope, and obviously Bill Belichick's also the GM of that team, but, like, if Nathaniel Hackett was trying that shit, I would hope that George Payton would have stepped in and gone, okay, I'm all for you hiring your own staff, but there's boundaries on this. There has to be some sort of guideline, because that's unacceptable.
Joey, I have good news for you. You have free reign right here, because Frankie brings up Vaughn and Chubb were heaping praise on Fangio on a Bleacher Report stream today.
Frankie, share that to me afterwards. I would love to prove this point even more. I would absolutely love to prove this point.
That's all he said.
What do you think about Vic Fangio?
What do I think about Vic Fangio? I mean, Zach, if you're asking me,
I think he's I think he was terrible. I think he was terrible, and I think Evero's better.
Well, Zach, I think you bring up yet again another terrible point. I'm not going to go into defending it. For the people that don't know, Bree and Zach have a bet set up on how many Fangio defenses I will have this year, so I'm not going to go into it. I'm going to go into the personal Zach attack. So this podcast is what I'll do instead every single time.
Yeah, I'm just glad that these are here so I can refer back to them. All right, we've gone off a little bit.
I'm glad everyone can see how bullied and abused I am.
Ooh, Frankie says, Bree, can you highlight that one for me? Frankie's latest comment. Fangio's defense so Everos could run. Frankie, great point. That's all I have to say.
I agree.
Frankie, you're off this show.
Frankie's dead on.
Don't show up on Thursday. The doors will be
co-host
closed.
right there. Thank you for speaking for me, Frankie.
And Coop comes back and says, no, not happy, disgusting rather. And that was in reference to Shermer. At least that's how I'm going to use it because I like to bend the rules here. Let's move on to the next round here for players who have the most at stake. I'm going to go with Zach's second pick here in Nick Benito.
Oh,
sweet.
wow.
I see we're running along. I'll make mine really quick here. This is a case where he hasn't been living up to his draft value. He was drafted to be a designated pass rusher, and I think right now it's fair to have some questions about him even in that role. I think when he was drafted, my questions about him would have been, this is a guy who I don't really see win much when there's contact. He kind of just runs around guys, or it's very minimal contact. He's winning with burst and with athleticism, and that's going to be a lot harder to do at the NFL level. Especially because, while a good athlete, he's not like Baron Browning or Micah Parsons, which is game wrecking. And it's kind of gone that way. And over these final 3 weeks, he is going to get a bit of an opportunity on third downs and whatnot. It's a little tougher because Baron Browning and Randy Gregory are both healthy. But guess what? And Jonathan Cooper's there. Those 3 guys are going to be there next year too. You're a second-round pick. Jonathan Cooper was more involved in the defense as a seventh-round pick his rookie season. Like, I'm scared. I don't really see what Benito brings to the 2023 Broncos at this point. It's looking like a disappointing draft pick for a team that needed to hit on their draft picks, and I want him to prove me wrong, hopefully, down the stretch.
Okay. Okay. I agree with you, Zach, that I do. And I'm not this one, the last one, to disagree. This one, I have a hard time doing most at stake with a rookie. And I thought about Nick Benito as well. It's just like, I need to see a guy after a season with an off season involved as well to see what they look like. Before I'm willing to pass judgment. And I think his draft status, being their first pick of that draft, will kind of hold him through this next year. I don't think there's actually much at stake with the Broncos, but I do think there's some at stake in the fans' eye. So if that's the way you're looking at it and just like perception of Nick Benito, I totally agree with you. If
fans' eye, and I think roster spot, like, you're coming in with a new coaching staff that is going to be, I think Dan Quinn's the heavy favorite to be the head coach. And if he comes in, I think there's a good chance they're running more than even front, which I know they're doing a little now. But I could see Nick Benito getting phased out a little this offseason. Like, he's not going to be off the roster, but I think he could be the last edge rusher on the depth chart. And, like, the draft status does help him out a little bit, but, like, it didn't take that long for, Shane Ray to fall out of favor. And he was a first-round pick. This guy's a pick at the very, very, very end of the second round. I don't think that guarantees him a ton of long-term depth chart security, especially with a new regime coming in.
Not long-term, but I think it will take his sophomore year. I think if he does get phased off, it will be during the sophomore year. Do you?
I think it's already starting to happen.
Do you think he could start this next year on the bad list?
Not on the practice squad, but he could start the year, I think, is the very last edge rusher off the bench.
Okay. I think the Broncos.
I think there's an outside chance he could be cut.
Even if this next coach is working under Peyton, they're like, you're going to be trying to make this pick work.
But, like, okay, Jonathan Cooper's going to be ahead of him on the depth chart next year. And they're going to probably draft an edge rusher at some point this year, maybe even a late round pick, maybe a mid round pick. I don't know, but they'll draft an edge rusher, I bet, at some point in this year's draft. Let's say that rookie comes in and immediately outperforms Nick Benito. in camp, just like looks better in camp to the coaches. And you're talking about this guy being the 5th guy off the bench now. Like, I don't know. Like the draft slot, I agree. It should buy him time. It should keep him around. But Jonathan Cooper is going to be ahead of him on the depth chart next year, I think. And so I think he's going to be number 4. And how often are you going to be rotating him in? I don't really know.
Okay. Interesting. It's an interesting one.
Great, interesting conversation, y'all. Really appreciate the input on that one. And I wanted to end on one that I think is really interesting, considering we didn't know if Courtland Sutton was even going to be available, I think, for the rest of the year, given some injury concerns as well. Courtland Sutton, I think, has a tremendous amount to prove, because not only did he fall out of that wide receiver 1 position, which he thought that he was a shoo-in for, which we thought he was a shoo-in for in training camp when Tim Patrick went down. He's been struggling quite a bit, and he has a lot to prove on whether or not he can not compete with Jeudy, but I think at this point complement Jeudy. It looks like they will be switching him in wide receiver roles, and they may try to attempt to do something that we've not seen them do before and use them in alternative positions. How do you guys feel about Courtland Sutton? What does he need to prove in the next 3 games?
Just that he can be a valuable piece of this Broncos offense. Like that's what I want to see at the end of the day. All I want to see is him be like better than average. I want to see the Broncos enter this offseason with, hey, but maybe Courtland Sutton can be really good. I don't want to enter this offseason and say, but we do have Courtland Sutton locked up for a while. That's pretty much it for me. I doubt that he's moved on this next year. I doubt it, because you just had extended him. But it would be good to think of him of an addition rather than, but he's here so we can't go out and add a new one. You know what I mean? Like, I would rather that. And I think that's a big reason why Jeudy was up for trade and not Sutton, is because they just had given him that contract. It didn't matter which one was really better at the end of the day. I thought that it was because they had to stand by what they had just done. They just had paid him. So I just want to make it seem like that contract and that extension can be worth it. That's what I kind of want to see down the stretch. And I really hope that he can do it.
Yeah, as it stands right now, he might be the odd man out if the Broncos draft a receiver high. They wouldn't cut him financially. They can't. But I think he could be the one that goes to the bench.
Really?
100%. It comes down to who looks better, Tim Patrick or Courtland Sutton next camp. If they made a substantial investment in a wide receiver, if they draft one in the first round.
Is that why they're going to switch his position a little bit and see if he can play in that?
The big slot is I like it for him as well.
I think big slot's good for him. I'm curious to see what he can do with, opposite Jeudy. But I think right now it's clear that Judy's your best receiver on this offense. And, how can you feature him more? And does Courtland Sutton fit as part of that vision? And it'd be tricky to do, but look at Kenny Golladay. Kenny Golladay has, granted, looked worse than Sutton, but he's on a more expensive deal. And the Giants were on wide receiver 9 this year and refused to put Kenny Golladay in. You've seen the Broncos injuries. Giants had that at wide receiver, and they don't have a lot of good wide receivers, and they still refuse to put their $19 million guy in.
They even traded one.
Exactly. And still will not put Kenny Golladay in for any snaps. And Sutton hasn't regressed to that point, but I don't think it's out of the question the Broncos draft a first-round receiver this year, especially let's say Sutton looks bad down this stretch. I think those odds are really good that the Broncos look to take a wide receiver with their first-round pick. And that wide receiver is going to be battling against Courtland Sutton and Tim Patrick. And that first-round wide receiver probably will have the inside track on those two guys. NFL's not for long. I know these guys signed contracts recently, but
boy, is it true.
Sutton has 3 touchdowns, I think, since the ACL. He's hasn't been the same guy. It's a problem. So you want to talk about
how much of that is quarterback play?
Some of it, but
But
we were
also
blaming a
has
lot
to
of that on
play.
Drew Lock and Teddy Bridgewater last season. I don't think Sutton has to be taken advantage of when you talk about his last season production.
But here's the issue. We saw Cortland Sutton with a quarterback that we didn't like play really good, right?
That's the thing. His whole selling
saw
point
it
was that he went for 1,200 yards with Brandon Allen and Joe Flacco and rookie Drew Lock.
Yeah, or even with exactly.
Just interesting. It changes a little bit because we were not considering that. It was this year's performance that, I guess, frustrating for the eyes of those who are analyzing Sutton's play is what I'm trying to.
I think that's a worst case scenario. I don't think it's a likely scenario, but I do think it's on the table. If he looks awesome, then all of a sudden maybe the Broncos don't like, whoa, Sutton in this power slot or Z role, however they end up playing him. This is great. And then Judy's maximized at the X, and maybe we need something for Tim Patrick. Maybe we need an insurance plan there, but we feel great with how these two fit together now. Like that could really change how the team used wide receiver this offseason as much as if he tanks. But I do think it's on the table that he could be phased out a little.
Frankie leaves me with a depression that I cannot cure. I could see Cortland being part of a draft night trade. Go ahead, Joey.
I think it's less about how Judy looks at the X, and it's more about how Sutton looks being able to move around. I think what Judy's proven is that you want to use his versatility. You want to put him all over the place. And in doing that, you're going to have either more or other players that can move around in your offense at the wide receiver position. And Sutton being able to play that big slot, he's going to have to be able to prove that he can, right? Because I do think that Judy's going to take some of those snaps over there. I think Judy's going to take some of those snaps at the Z. I think he's going to take a lot of snaps at the slot. I think the idea with Judy being the guy in your wide receiver room, it needs to be how can we place him all over the place? How can we move him around? How can we make him the most valuable? And I think in doing that, it is using that versatility and where can he make plays. So it's less about if Sutton can play the X at the position, because I think he's proven that he can at least be an average. It becomes, can he be that other versatile piece on this offense, or is he pigeonholed somewhere? I think that's a big question mark right now.
I mean, they saw enough out of him post ACL to be able, and I want to go back to Zach's point just really quickly because I don't know any better. They saw enough out of him post ACL to be able to give him the contract that they did with promise of better QB play. And there is obviously something wrong with Cortland Sutton, but is it really something that has to do with is it like confident? What do you think is the actual issue?
I think the contract was questionable at the time, honestly. I don't think he was great last year. I think it was I don't think there's been a decline from last year to this year. If anything, maybe there was an uptick because Sutton looked, I thought, really good like the first 4 weeks of the season. But generally speaking, to me, it felt like a gamble on, I think we can get this guy for cheap because he's still kind of rehabbing the ACL and there's some doubt about him. I think it was a gamble. You were kind of buying low with the expectation it was going to pop once he got better quarterback play and he got fully removed from that ACL. And granted, he hasn't gotten the better quarterback play. You're 100% right there, but he has gotten the time removed from the ACL. And I think it's even just like an eye test thing. Like in 2019, oh my God, like that was such a fun one. He was just taking over plays. Like there were plays he had no right catching the football, and he would do it. And it was like a weekly basis, that stretch with the Vikings game and the Browns game and the Chargers game. And he's not just making plays at the catch point. He's running afterwards and stiff arming a Chargers defender for like a 60, 70-yard gain, whatever it was. I haven't seen that ability, that talent, unfortunately, since the ACL. And it breaks my heart, but I've seen
flashes. I think I've seen flashes. He's made some incredible catches. I just don't know. Yeah, maybe it is a hesitation with that injury and not putting yourself out on the line. But he made a diving catch I guess it's been more than a couple of weeks. Yeah. Go ahead, Joey.
I think the regression has come in one specific area, and that area is what made him special. It was the ability to physically dominate a cornerback. That was where he was really, really special. It wasn't just him having really good hands. It wasn't a lot of this other stuff. Because I think he's actually progressed in our route runner a ton, actually. Not just a little bit.
Separation now. It's how he's in separation now.
A ton since his rookie season. Because, I mean, when you talked about Sutton as a rookie, the talking point used to be like, oh, he can physically dominate a cornerback, but he can't separate. Now it's that he can separate a little bit, but he can't, like, he's not physically dominating like he was. That was what made him special at the time, too. I mean, for the people that don't remember, he was playing so good that the Broncos traded DT, right? Like like they moved on from DT. They moved on from Emmanuel after that. And a lot of that had to do with, hey, the Courtland Sutton's the future of this Broncos wide receiver room. Because that's how special he looked at the catch point. And explosive he looked at the catch point. And when I talk about physically dominating, I'm talking about, like, in the training camp that year, they were calling him mini Calvin Johnson. That's what Chris Harris Jr. was calling him that year. And I mean, I recommend, I won't recommend this because it's kind of sad, but if you go back and look at his highlights that 2019 year, or if you have Game Pass or if you have access to NFL film, go watch that Minnesota Vikings game that year. You could even go back to my tweets that year, and you would see me predicting that the Broncos have a number one wide receiver, a guy that could be in the tier of the DeAndre Hopkins, the guys like that, where I was talking about, like, this guy is a person that the whole defense has to scout over. And you saw it in that Vikings game in specific.
Does that instinctiveness go away? Go ahead, Zach.
I think it totally can. I think it totally can with this sort of an injury. And I think, again, like, he looked like a top 20 receiver trending towards top 10. I don't think that's there for him anymore. And Joey put it perfectly. I don't want to add too much to that. He just doesn't physically dominate people anymore. I think he's a fine player. I think he's progressed in certain areas. Maybe it's mental. Maybe someone can coach that version of Sutton out of him. But at this point, he's far enough removed from the ACL that it wouldn't be a time thing, at least based on what we know about ACLs in the modern NFL. They generally don't linger for like 2 years. I don't know. I think he's a fine player. I don't think he's a bad player. But I think he could easily find himself being the odd man out in this receiving room if they add just one more talented weapon, because I think they're going to be stuck choosing behind two expensive guys in Tim Patrick and Courtland Sutton.
It's like, think about your favorite football player and then take away what they were best at. And it kind of feels like that's what Courtland Sutton is going through. He hasn't reinvented himself in a way, right? Because he has become like a solid, like, I don't think he's an amazing separator, but he's at least become solid at it. And, but think about, like, if you whoever you're thinking of, there's an attribute that makes that player special. If you were to take that away, it would be really hard for those players to reinvent themselves completely and find another special attribute that they have. You know what I mean?
If James Williams never had that same burst for the Lions that he did in Alabama,
or Adrian Peterson didn't have the contact balance, like, and then they all had to reinvent themselves. It would be tough. I don't even blame Courtland Sutton. I feel sorry that this has happened with that ACL injury. Honestly, I wanted to see him come in here and completely dominate the season. Yet it hasn't come out yet. I mean, maybe it can come next year, but this is where it becomes something you have to look at. Like, you could have all the hope in the world that it does, but as an NFL GM and a decision maker, you need to look at the probability of it. You just seen 2 back-to-back years where it wasn't there. Are you willing to bet on it again? That's what you kind of have to look at there.
Yeah, and the other thing here is, because Bree's like, well, does that just go away with an ACL? Because most of the time it doesn't. But even in these cases where, now medical technology is so great with these ACLs and everything, and we do see players return to form like 80, 90% of the time. But unfortunately, that 10 to 20 is still there. And I think very unfortunately for the Broncos, Cortland Sutton might fall into that bucket.
All right. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. Thanks for
what a downer to end on. I'm
questions
so sorry, everybody.
and comments. I'm gonna go cry. That's why I'm hoping Joey's question of the day brings us back. I was just
Make it happy, Joey. Make it happy.
It's time for everyone's favorite time of the night. Joey's question of the day.
All I want to do is ask if you guys have New Year's plans. Are you guys going to do anything for New Year's past Christmas? Or no? Or are you guys just going to kick it in and chill?
I don't celebrate festivities. Oh, you're going to Westcliff. Go ahead.
You're going to
I'm sorry. I waited because I thought you were going, and then we both started at the same. I'm so sorry, Bree. I'm going to I'm going to Westcliff. That is always fun. Bunch of country folk shooting off fireworks makes it a little pretty. I love when it's snowy down there. Y'all hate snow, so I know you're not fans of it. But I'm looking forward to it.
For those thinking of what Zach's place looks like in Westcliff, I would say Courage the Cowardly Dog. Think that vision, right? Think about that house when it was sucked up by the tornado. It's very similar. It's very similar.
What are you referencing?
Courage the Cowardly Dog. Yeah, it looks like the Courage the Cowardly Dog house. And it's a good comp where I'm Courage because my parents are horrendously abusive to me.
I'm so confused. Like, I have no idea what you're referencing. I don't know
what. Wait, was Courage? Do you not know Courage the Cowardly Dog? Actually, this came up in conversation between Bree and me a while ago. We were talking about like the shows we watched as kids, and I was like, "You would have loved Courage the Cowardly Dog, and you would. You should pull it up. It's a kids' cartoon, but that
show.
I watched like Laverne and Shirley, so I don't know what you're talking about. Colton Cooper. Oh no, he says it's -20 here right now. I don't want to leave my house. I think I'm falling in line with that this winter. It is remarkably freezing already, too much so for my sorts.
That's what you get for not knowing how to coach outside zone, Cooper. Learn how to coach outside zone, and then we'll keep you around in Denver.
Oh no, that was
We're cool. He knows I'm fucking.
One of the most ridiculous things that has ever happened was that talking point. I don't.
It hurts so bad. Sorry, Coop. Love you. Frankie said Bree probably liked Ren and Stimpy. We got a laugh from Coop. He's good. Everyone recovered. Frankie said I liked Ren and Stimpy. I did. I liked actually Rocco's Modern Life a little bit better. Ren and Stimpy kind of freaked me out just because it was like severely fever dreamish. But New Year's plans, I don't have any. I don't like to celebrate those types of things, and I don't like crowds or people, so I will not be out in masses. You'll never convince me to go to a New Year's Eve thing like a bash. It would take a lot of convincing, a lot of probably alcohol, and I'm not about that. So yeah, no plans. I'll be at home. Maybe I'll go bowling. Is anybody going bowling for New Year's Eve? I didn't know Zach was going to Westcliff. Have fun, Zach.
Yeah, well, we're going to do a Westcliff thing soon for LTB. This is a family thing. I'm celebrating Christmas with Elle's family proper, so I'll celebrate Christmas with my family on New Year's. But yeah, we'll some other holiday we'll go down and have a LTB retreat.
I guess. Joey, what are your plans?
What are my plans for New Year's?
Yeah,
I mean, I was planning on inviting you guys to do something on New Year's here on the podcast. But Zach
said she won't do it under any circumstances.
Yeah.
And I'm not,
Yeah, exactly. But you guys both ditched me, so it's cool. I'll go make other plans. I don't really need you guys in my life.
I didn't ditch you. I literally just don't have plans. Like you would have to drag me out of the house.
Well, damn. All right, then, Zach, we're going to Bree's house on New Year's.
Yeah. He can't. He's going to be in Westcliff.
Hey, Joey. You know what? If I was around, I would love to hang out with you. And I'm sorry, I'm not around to hang out with you.
Yeah, listen, Zach. All that's nice and sweet, but I don't want to hear it.
I don't need this kind of abuse.
Bree, where can they find your amazing work?
If you feel so obliged, you can go ahead and find all of my work over on milehighsports.com. I'm here on the Let's Talk Broncos podcast Monday through Saturday. Don't mind Thursday. That's Frankie and Joey's work, but you're going to want to check that out doubly. So they do a tremendous job breaking down what's on draft for Let's Talk Draft. I don't know why I got those wires crossed, but you're welcome. You can also find me on Mile High Sports Radio 1 to 2 p.m. for the Fan Cave on Mondays, breaking down every single Broncos game with Zach Seegers. And special shout out, both Zach Seegers and Joey Richards and myself will be on the Fan Cave tomorrow, 1 to 2 p.m. We're taking over the show. They told us they had some extra time, and we told them we'd love to do it. You can also check out Zach's stuff on Mile High Sports, but I'll let you tell them the rest. Zach, take it over.
Yeah, tons of articles over on Mile High Sports. What else is going on? Little tweets over at Zach_Seegers. Yeah, support the show. Please give us likes, rate us 5 stars on whatever podcast platform you're listening to. It takes like 30 seconds and it means a stupid amount to the show. It really does help support us. Yeah, support LTB. It's contract negotiation season. We need that bag. Give us those likes. Give us those stars.
Pick up my extension.
Yeah. Tag us. Give us that franchise tag.
Hey, yeah. Please give us the franchise tag.
Give us that franchise. But in all seriousness, we love all the support you guys give us, and those likes and everything mean the world. So thank you, and can't wait to see all you on the next show.
Yeah. Also, if we're speaking about money, I learned today that YouTube is a more valuable stream than Twitter and Facebook. So if you're on either of those, please, for the love of God, go transfer yourself over to YouTube. We want
for
that.
Our benefit.
And then also, if you're like on Twitter or whatever the situation is, please recommend to your friends that they listen to on specifically YouTube.
Wayne's got a good idea.
That is at Mile High Sports YouTube. That is at the Let's Talk Broncos YouTube. Both of them would be appreciated. And then also, I'm going to be doing a Shedeur Sanders piece. If you're a CU Buffaloes fan, I am excited about him. I thought it was kind of gimmicky at the beginning, but the more I've watched him, and I'm like 3 games in now, the more I'm looking at a guy that could actually be like an NFL player. Like, I actually really think that. Like, wow. Shedeur Sanders it's not a gimmick. Deion's kid is nice at quarterback. Like, I'm not going to say like, oh, first round pick, Heisman winner or anything, but could he be an NFL player? Undoubtedly. Like, I really, really like Shedeur Sanders, especially for the Colorado Buffaloes. I'm going to write a piece on that. So make sure you're keeping an eye out for that. That'll come on my page. And then, yeah, guys, yeah, that's all I really have. Follow me at Jar Drafts. Make sure you listen to Frankie and I's draft show every single Thursday. If you're not there, like, we're gatekeeping you. You're not even really a draft fan if you're not listening to Frankie and I's show.
That's true.
He's got a really good point there. Okay, everybody wave to the camera. Good night.
Bye.